teaching and learning and education. If you go back to this this egg on the plate thing, all our emphasis over the last 10 years has been on the yolk. Getting kids into school for longer, starting with breakfast clubs, getting better teaching, better funded, building schools for the future, so on and so forth. The agenda of Departments of Children's Services, which are much more joined up, and the Children's Plan encourages everyone to move out from that and look across this kind of realm. What's the relationship between families, communities and schools? What's the impact on quality of life of children, safety, health, so on and so forth? The agenda is moving to the plate and away from the yolk. What might that mean? Well, it means better schools, but it probably also means different schools. It means schools working in some completely new and different way. It might mean that you have bits of educational provision distributed all around the borough, some in workplaces. In Leeds, some of the most successful experiments with excluded kids are with bits of educational provision that happen in sports clubs or at Leeds Football Club. It might mean that there's a much wider provision of family mentors and personal trainers as a right, some entirely new category of support. You could imagine, say, a much more distributed provision of technology for learning across the borough. What would be a platform that would allow people to learn wherever they were? You could imagine workplaces being centres of learning. You could imagine the spread of personal budgets into aspects of education. If it works in social care, how could you use personal budgets to animate people's ambitions in education? How long will it have to be before Barnet has its own curriculum? Why shouldn't Barnet have its own curriculum, which is based on a national curriculum, but something different? What diversity of supply of educational services would Barnet really need, including schooling at home and for diverse communities? So in other words, if you open that up, you get beyond improving the school or improving the links. You have a hugely ambitious agenda which you could really attack. And if we're going to make a real difference, we would have to attack. But one thing that's clear is that whilst there will be institutions, they may well not be best described as schools. The whole Building Schools for the Future programme is predicated on the idea that schools should be the future, whereas in some sense, actually, we should be building new kinds of institutions that interact with society in new ways. So if you're serious about going down this route, that you've improved standards, now you want to do more, you want to reach out, you want to work in new ways, attack these much more diffuse problems. If you worry that you're hitting the target but missing the point still, then this is the kind of terrain you're going to get into. These are the kind of challenges that will be raised. And they're big challenges. How do you stay rooted in current performance, services? How do you not lose legitimacy because the bin service starts going down the pan because people are concentrating on something else? How do you avoid the institutions just sucking all the resources back in, thus preventing you experimenting with new kinds of approaches? How do you prove the value of all of this? If you're in services, you probably have quite a good way of thinking, well, if we put this number of people in, and we've got this kind of provision, we can deal with this number of cases, and can show you this kind of value. If you're working in this kind of world, multiple partners, much more distributed, how do you measure the value created? Take the early challenge about obesity. How do you measure the prevention of obesity? You can measure your treatment of someone with diabetes, but how do you measure and capture the value of preventing someone getting diabetes? So these are big challenges. And there's a huge challenge in this world for workforces. So imagine a world in which everyone receiving social care in Barnet has a personal budget. One of the key things that is clear from all the personal budget, individual budget pilot sites is that people will not spend that money on social workers. They just don't want them. Doesn't mean that social workers have no role to play in designing the system, but by and large, people don't want social workers. They don't want people they don't know coming into their homes. They like people they know coming into their homes, peers, families, friends. They like technology that helps them in their homes. They like people who take them out of their homes on trips, but what they don't like is social workers. So what happens to that workforce if you move into this kind of world? It's a big challenge for the kind of skills that you're going to need. And in this world, you might have much more distributed skills, much more pro-am, much more peer-to-peer. So again, if you look at people with personal budgets, met this woman called Brenda in Oldham. Brenda is basically looked after by her husband, Eric. Brenda is in a wheelchair. Brenda, to get respite care, Brenda used to have to go to Oldham's respite centre. Oldham is on the edge of Saddleworth Moor. Just imagine in your mind's eye what Oldham local authorities' respite centre is like. It is not a place you would choose to have a holiday in. That is the only place she could go under her care plan to get respite for Eric. She goes onto a personal budget. She employs, well, first of all, she bought a car, not allowed under a care plan. First of all, she bought a car. Secondly, she employed 2 market traders, no qualifications, to be her care workers. Those market traders take Brenda out with one of her friends to markets around the northwest, and they go shopping. So it has several impacts, this. The first is that Brenda socializes more, she's out more, she sees her friends more. It's a lower cost solution which generates greater value for her and greater value for society, but it means there isn't a need for Oldham's local authority respite centre. Because when Brenda wants respite, she books a holiday through lastminute.com at a disabled hotel in Tenerife, takes her carer, and it's cheaper than going to Oldham's respite centre. So that's what happens if you unlock the intelligence, ingenuity and imagination of the people we currently describe as users and we think we have to serve. If you turn them into participants, investors, then they will find ways of doing things which are more intelligent than we can ever imagine. So that's the challenge across the board, and in that case, complete change in who does the work. It's not us delivering stuff, it's them assembling solutions.